Hello everyone, my name is Valerie Torres. I'm from Bogota, Colombia. I'm a business and international relations student at La Salle University. I am going to talk about the historical relationship between Colombia and the Philippines. The Philippines and Colombia somehow share some common cultures in terms of religion, cuisine, and much more. They have had a history of peace negotiations in which they have held talks to peacefully resolve their long-standing insurgency problems with Muslim and communist rebel groups. In 2012, the Philippines reached a peace agreement with the rebel Moro Islamic Liberation Front, while the Colombian government began peace talks in Oslo with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Both countries, which face a similar challenge, have made efforts to reach out to political leaders who oppose negotiations, have exchanged visits to create professional and political networks, and have established peace processes that have made them shine as examples of innovation and negotiation for the world. The two countries have maintained trade relations since 1995. The countries have held bilateral consultative mechanisms (BCM) meetings over the years to discuss their commitments to enhance their cooperation in areas such as trade and investment opportunities, climate change, disaster risk reduction and management, among others. Colombia is not officially part to the ASEAN forum, but has appointed an ambassador to ASEAN. In 2016, the Pacific Alliance and ASEAN adopt a cooperation document between the two mechanisms with emphasis on economic, educational, sustainable development, science and technology issues. As a result of this bi-regional dialogue, the Pacific Alliance ASEAN Work Plan for the years 2017 to 2018 was extended until December 2019 and under the presidency of Colombia in the second half to 2020 continued. Colombia submitted to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, President pro tempore of ASEAN 2020, the request for accession to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, or TAC. The purpose of the TAC is to promote peace, friendship, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence, to strengthen solidarity, a close relationship and full cooperation in the economic, social, cultural, and technical, scientific, and administrative fields, to accelerate economic growth and the expansion of trade among the peoples of Southeast Asia, Argentina, Brazil, and as of 2019, the Republic of Peru are already adherents to the TAC.
Hello everyone, my name is Luis Eduardo Diaz Bernal, and today I talk about the relationship between Colombia and Philippines regarding imports and exports. So we found that the total value of exports from the Philippines to Colombia in 2019 it was about $50.3 million. And in addition, according to the latest data, the trade value of exports from the Philippines to Colombia last July 2020 amounted to $1.6 million. We found also that the total value of Philippines exports to the world it was in 2019 of $63 million, and the value of Philippines exports to Colombia it was of $51 million. We also found that the total value of Colombia imports it was for $43 million, and the value of Colombia imports from Philippines it was $51 million. So we find too that as you can see in the chart, you can see that the chart shows the total trade value of imports and exports of the Philippines in September 2019 and 2020, respectively. The data shows that in 2020, the imports totally roughly an estimate of 60% of Philippines trade, while the exports are around roughly 40% of the total. So we also found that as percentage of the Philippines exports, the exports from Philippines to Colombia, it was for 0.008%, and as percentage of Colombia's import, it was for 0.11%. The main products, as you can see in this chart, are the office machine parts. That means that the main products that Colombia imports from Philippines in 2019, it was office machine parts with a percentage of 46.7%. The video displays with a total of 12.4% of the total, and the electrical transformers with 8.1% of the total. Also, we can see that the trend in the past 5 years for the parts exports during the 2011 and 2015, the total trade during 2014 was the highest with a value of $40 million exports, being higher in 2014, and imports being higher in 2013. Uh, um, During the last 20 years, the exports of Philippines to Colombia have increased at an annualized rate of 12.2% from 3.2 million dollars, and in 1995 to 50.3 millions in 2019. The latest trend for Philippines trade is the Philippines trade deficit decreased to 2.42 billion in January to 2021 from 3.50 billion in the same month a year earlier. Exports fell by 4.2% year on year to 5.49 billion, while imports dropped at a faster 14.9% to 5.2% year on year to $7.91 billion. So basically, that are the estimates. You can see this chart, the trend in the past 5 years, also in the future 5 years. It may expected that in the future 5 years, trade exports will decrease according to the trade and economics exports from the Philippines dropped by 2.3% year on year to 5.31 billion in February 2021.
So good day everyone. This is the Philippines Colombia Group, and today we're going to discuss trades between Philippines and Colombia. So together with me are my colleagues, uh, Sean Escamilla, Jenna Gan, Bernal, Nika Navarro, and Paulo. Next slide. So in this reporting, we're gonna discuss the overview of the relations between Philippines and Colombia. Second is the trades between Philippines and Colombia. Third would be the comparison and analysis. And lastly is conclusion and recommendation for Colombia and Philippines. So first, the history. So the Philippines and Colombia somehow share some common cultures in terms of religion, cuisine, and much more. So over the years, they have a history of peace negotiations in which they have discussions resolving peacefully the long-running insurgents problem with Muslims and communist rebel groups. So in 2012, the Philippines entered the peace accord with the rebel Moro Islamic Liberation Front, while Colombia's government began peace talks in Oslo with the Marxist Revolutionary Armed Force of Colombia. And both countries who face similar challenges have made efforts to reach out to political leaders opposed to the negotiations. So, second, both countries have been engaged in trade since the year 1995. So, these countries have held bilateral consultation mechanism or BCM meetings over the years in order for them to discuss their different commitments to enhance their corporations uh, in such as trade and investment opportunities, climate change, disaster risk reduction, and many more. So third, Colombia is not an official part of ASEAN Forum. However, it has appointed an ambassador to ASEAN. In the year 2016, Pacific Alliance and ASEAN adopted a cooperation document between the two mechanisms with an emphasis on economic, educational, and sustainable development, as well as science and technology issues. So, in result, all this bi-regional dialogue or the Pacific Alliance ASEAN Work Plan for the years 2017 to 2018 was extended until December 2019. So lastly, Colombia presented to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, President pro tempore of ASEAN 2020, so the request to join the Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation or the TAC took place. So the purpose of this is so that they can promote peace, friendship, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence to strengthen solidarity as well as a close relation and the full cooperation in the economic and social cultural administrative. So next.
So the Philippines and Colombia do not have an existing free trade agreement between themselves. However, they have been enhancing their ties in economic cooperation, participate in ASEAN forums, and are both included in the World Trade Organization. And these are the activities that happened during the meeting agenda in 2020. So in April 2020, a meeting was held between the national coordinators of the specific Pacific Alliance and the ASEAN Permanent Representatives Committee. And this type of meeting is key to organizing the joint work of the two regional blocs. In April 6 to 9, there was a ASEAN summit that held in Dang Nam, Vietnam. And in July 31 to August 5, there was a meeting of the ASEAN foreign ministers and related meetings that happened in Hanoi, Vietnam.
In August 2020 in Jakarta, every year around August, a meeting is held between the ambassadors of the Pacific Alliance in Jakarta and the ASEAN Permanent Representatives Committee. During September to October 2020, New York, every year there is a meeting of ministers of foreign relations of the Pacific Alliance, ASEAN, within the framework of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And during November 11 to 15, in Hanoi, Vietnam, they they made the 37th ASEAN Summit.
In 2019, the Philippines exported a total of 50.3 million to Colombia and Colombia Trade 2021. In addition, according to the latest data, the trade value of exports from the Philippines to Colombia last July 2020 amounted to 1.06 million. This is a chart containing the Philippine export and import statistics from September 2019 to September 2020.
So, so to discuss the it, so to discuss the value, uh, as percentage of Philippine export, it is negative 9.94%. Uh, on the other hand, the as percentage of Philippine export, it's 0.11%.
So the main products that the Philippines exported to Colombia are machinery, nuclear reactors, and boilers with a value of 26.07 million, electronic equipment, which is equal to the value of 13.38 million, optimal photo technical medical apparatus, which is equal to 2.20 million, articles of apparel knit or crocheted with a value of 1.76 million, clocks and watches with a value of 1.54 million, and tanning, dyeing extracts, tannins, deri- derivatives, and pigments, which is equal to the value of $1.4 million.
These are also some of their main products. Articles of apparel, not knit or crochet, 833.89K. Rubbers, 799.90K. Edible fruits, nuts, peel of citrus fruit or melons, 780.49K. And lac gums or resins, which amounted to 365.56K.
Moving forward, so for the past 5 years, here in table 3, you'll see the foreign trade of the Philippines by country in the year 2011 to 2015. So for the past exports, uh, the total trade during 2014 was the highest with a value of 40,983,957. On the other hand, export being higher in 2014 and import being higher in 2013. So during the last 24 years, the exports of the Philippines to Colombia have increased at an annualized rate of 12.2% from 3.2 million in 1995 to 50.3 million in 2019. So the latest trend for Philippine trades is that the Philippine trade deficit decreased to 2.42 US dollar 2.42 billion US dollar in January 2021 from 3.50 billion US dollar in the same month a year earlier.
So in 2019, Colombia exported a total of $8.15 million to the Philippines, and the trade value of Colombia last March 2020 amounted to $886,000. So the percentage of PH imports is equal to negative 23.21%, and the percentage of the trading bloc's exports is 0.0096%.
So this is the trends for the trading blocks for Colombia to Philippines. Oh wait, this is for Philippines. This is for the past 5 years. Next slide, please. So the main products that the Colombia to Philippines exports and imports are pesticides, which amounted to 3.94 million, packaged medicaments, 1.1 million, and bandages, 423K.
So for the balance of trade, Colombia's trade deficit rose to 1.11 billion in December of 2020 from 0.75 billion in the corresponding month of the previous year. Exports fell 9% over a year earlier to 3.03 billion amid lower sales of fuels and mining products, and most important export partners were the US, China, Brazil, and Ecuador.
So moving forward to the trends, exports of Colombia to the Philippines have increased at an annualized rate of 13.2% from 41 413 thousand dollars in 1995 to 8.15 million in 2019. So the following table shows Colombia's national trade summary, and as you can see on the year 2019, it mirrors the Philippines in terms of imports and export percentage, roughly tallying 60 and 40% respectively. So for the volume, it indicates an estimate increase of 3% for imports and 6% for exports for the year 2021.
So according to Dr. Serafino Rodolfo, the Undersecretary for Industry Development and Trade Policy, DTI, these are some key points in the trade policies of the Philippines. So first, the best trade strategy is a robust industrialization policy. Next, the most effective industrialization policy is one that deepens and expands local value chain. Third, PH's biggest incentive is our growing domestic market, whose requirements are largely being met by imports. Fourth, the biggest challenge is the expanding deficit. This is a direct result of the dynamic growth of our economy and our industry's inability, despite growing at impressive rates for the past 6 years, to fulfill domestic requirements. And lastly, fifth, while we continue opening markets and securing preferential tariffs for our exports, we will not be able to address the deficit if we do not deepen our industrial capability.
This is the analysis of trading block from Colombia's trade practices. According to the International Trade Center, Colombia has been a mentor or a member of WTO since 1995 and in 2012, it applied a simple average MFN tariff of 8.8%. The agricultural sector is relatively protected through differentiated tariffs. Together with Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru, Colombia was a founding member of the Andean Community, or CAN. Colombia's tariff policy is therefore defined according to the CAN framework and guidelines and is aligned with the CAN Common External Tariff, with certain exceptions. In the framework of the Latin American Integration Association, Colombia has signed agreements with Costa Rica, Chile, Cuba, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Panama, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, as well as with the member countries of the Caribbean Community, the Northern Triangle of Central America, and Mercosur. Colombia grants preferential treatment for all imports from Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru, provided they fulfill the CAN's origin requirements, and imports from countries with which it has signed agreements in the LIA framework. We can see that Colombia prioritizes trade with countries that are near in proximity to them.
During quarter four of 2020, Colombia's exports decreased in value by 2.3 billion, driven by low demand for oil. Despite early signs of domestic economic activity, the value of imports decreased by 12.9% to 12 billion. Therefore, the 2020 trade deficit totaled 12.4 billion, lower than in 2019. During quarter three of 2020, Colombia's current account deficit totaled 1.8 billion, which was 121 million higher than in quarter two and 2.4 billion lower than in the same period in 2019 when it stood at 4.2 billion. The higher current account deficit in quarter three relative to quarter two is explained by larger deficits on merchandise goods and service trade and factor income. These results were partially offset by net income from current transfers. Compared with 2019, the 2.4 billion reduction in the current account deficit were driven by lower factor income expenses and smaller merchandise goods in deficit.
So for the Philippines, following a drop in merchandise exports last April, which saw a contraction of 49.86% and an even steeper drop in merchandise imports of 65.2%. Both exports and imports have seen modest improvements all through imports and still have a long way to go. Exports grew by 3% in November, while imports contracted by 18.90%. So, cash remittances year to date were still highly lower than previous year, with January to November having 0.8% less than in 2019. So that's all. Thank you all very much for listening.